Tamika, are you there?
I am here.
Good morning, young lady. Happy 40th birthday to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon,
Now,
actually.
listen, I got about 8 or 9 people in here. I don't know their voice work, but do you want us to sing happy birthday to you?
No, that's all right.
Sure it's all right?
All right, but thank you very
Okay,
much.
all right, because I was willing to go forward with it for you.
I
You
know
know that.
that's right.
I you would do it.
Well,
I
listen,
know you.
Tamika, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I know that you are a continuing voice in the cause for social justice everywhere. And I want the listeners of Favor 100.7 to know that we're going to be about social justice because we absolutely believe that until everybody has a seat at the table of success, America will never truly see its promise. And over the last 2 weeks, we've seen largely peaceful protests around the country. It really seems like America is at a point of real change. In your opinion, what are the next steps to ushering in this much-needed change?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on today, and it's good to be with you, Jonathan Mason. You've been such a good friend to me and supporter of my work for many, many years. I was sitting watching this morning the press conference that the members of Congress held, along with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer spoke at it as well, and I was listening to the changes that they want to make, the bills they want to get passed, and Chuck Schumer was basically saying to the Republicans that let's debate this on the floor. And I thought to myself, wow, all of the things that we've been asking for, demanding for so long, it's all shaping up now. And I don't know how much will actually get done in this particular time, but I know that we're definitely moving closer. I heard Nancy Pelosi announcing the names of those people who have died at the hands of police, and she couldn't really say all of the names, pronounce all of the names properly, which lets me know that even she has been sort of removed from these incidents, because if we started calling the names, we know them, because we say them so often. But I know you could feel the uncomfortableness that she's going through, and that's okay. That's what we need. People need to feel uncomfortable in this moment, and that uncomfortability needs to be moving them towards real substantive change. And she was standing there with her Kensington scarf on, with Karen Bass and other leaders in the Congress, and she started talking about getting rid of no-knock warrants. I mean, this is something that is extremely sensitive for us right now, because we know that Breonna Taylor was murdered in Louisville, Kentucky in March of this year with the use of a no-knock warrant that allowed police officers to kick open her door and shoot into her home, where she was shot 8 times. She was murdered for absolutely no reason. And so I think that's what we need, Jonathan. We need to make sure that the street protests are connected to, or is connected to, what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I shared with my congregation yesterday that I support protesters. I support the protests. I've participated in the protests, but protest without a program leads to no progress. And so we are focused now on how we can deliver the right services in the community that are going to uplift our people and, again, secure them that seat at the table of success. But I do have to ask you this question. What impact do you believe that our national leaders, one sitting in the White House, has had on the climate in our country today?
I think the President of the United States, while many of us, like to call him different things, we don't like to call him the president. We have to, because that's the reality of what we're dealing with. This man is sitting at the highest office the most powerful office in the world, not just in America, but in the world. And I think his rhetoric, his tone, and his either inability or lack of desire to be an adult and bring communities together and try to appeal for healing is exactly what incited some of the violence and vandalism and other things that we saw happening on the street. And I say that because I believe that there are, and I think studies have been done, people have been talking about the uptick in white supremacist activities across this country, and I believe that he has a following of people who really kind of wait for cues from him on, what they're going to do, whether that be going out and harassing and abusing people of Mexican descent, whether that be, police officers who we've seen that in one video they're abusing a person of color, and the next thing you know, they've got a Make America Great hat on at another time. I think his rhetoric and his tone is very insightful, and it's extremely dangerous for America. What I will say, however, and I have to make sure to say this every time, is that I'm also not willing to see him as so much of a boogeyman that we are unable to challenge the person that people are asking us to put our votes behind, and that is of Joe Biden. Do I think he's Donald Trump? Absolutely not. Do I think that we should show out at the polls and make sure that we get Donald Trump out by all means necessary? Absolutely. But I think this is just the time to be able to look at the craziness that's coming out of the White House and say to ourselves, we don't ever want to see anything like this again. And we also don't want to put people in office that made it there because we were so desperate but not really strategic and deliberate about our ask. So we've got a lot on the table in this moment. But certainly the president that we have at this moment is dangerous for America and American citizens. We know his incompetence is responsible for 100,000 Americans, 100,000 plus Americans losing their lives to a virus that, we've heard from all those who've done the studies and the reports and the experts that if it had just been a few weeks ahead when he was out here trying to downplay the COVID virus, we probably could have saved many, many lives. So there's a whole thing here, Jonathan, and I know you know more than anyone what it means to be a leader and what your words mean to those people who are listening.
Absolutely. And I think the messaging here is, in November, we've got to get out and vote. We've got to vote like we've never voted before. This is the time for real change, but we're going to be the ones that bring the change. Listen, I don't want to hold you long. I know this is your birthday, but I also know you're still in the midst of a lot of work and will continue to be. We've got people listening in Philadelphia and across the country right now. I just want to know this. What's your final charge to these new listeners of Philly's Favor 100.7 that desire real change in this country, that desire for all people to have a seat at that table of success and to have equality everywhere? What's your charge to them right now?
I would say that, we need to make sure that while we're out there protesting, and by the way, yes, you should feel good about yourself if you went to a protest. If you walk next to your children, walk next to a white person, an Asian person, a Latino person, you should feel good about yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that, because there were a few instances, as you said, largely peaceful, or I would say largely nonviolent, but there were a few instances where, things did happen, vandalism, violence, and otherwise. Don't let anyone tell you that that's the center, that that's the focus. People hitting the streets over the last few weeks has moved this country. And so we must continue to do that. We must continue to show up. And I'm so proud to see that even after the 4 officers responsible for murdering George Floyd were arrested and charged, that even then people still continue to go out into the streets because George Floyd is one of the names on a long list, a list that is too long. But I will say that what we have to be clear about is that we are not in a time when we can just protest and go home. We have got to make sure that we're going, as you said, down a few streets. And I tell everyone every chance that I get, we have got to make sure that we travel down on our marching route the street of filling out the census form. We have got to fill out that census form because as this country begins to brown, we are becoming more of a brown nation, which actually has some white folks in power really, really upset. But as that is happening, what we have to understand is that the resources that come out of the numbers from the census will determine what goes into our communities and how this country has to respond to a new Browning America. And so we need to make sure we're filling out that census form. We also have to make sure we're registering our people to vote, because after losing 100,000 plus Americans and understanding that the elderly population is the most committed and devoted voting bloc in the nation, and we also know that black people were disproportionately impacted in the number of 100,000 plus individuals. And so we've got some issues there. We're going to have a lot of elderly people who are going to be afraid to go to the polls, and rightfully so, because they want to protect their lives and they're afraid to be exposed. And so we have to make sure that we're doing things like getting our elderly family the absentee ballots that they need, and just getting them organized in general so that they are able to cast their votes. But while we're doing that, we've got to register everyone 18 and older. You need to check your state and make sure that a person who is formerly incarcerated that has a federal charge can still vote in many states, and make sure that if that is the case, that they're registered and ready to vote. And then in November, it can't be too cold. It can't be too icy. It can't be a bad day. It can't be we don't like Joe Biden. We have got to show up at the polls, as you said, Jonathan, like we've never, ever shown up before.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Tamika, listen, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us on this inaugural launch of Philly's favorite 100.7 FM.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and we are looking forward to hearing you on our airwaves again sometime in the near future. We're here to support you. We're here to help you. We're here to do whatever it is that's called upon to make sure that we bring change to this community and to our country. Thank you, and enjoy your 40th birthday.
Thank you. Love to you all.
All right. Bye-bye now.